I'm Renee Williams.
And I'm Billy Thomas.
And welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. You know, we have a very sweet topic that we're going to be talking about today, and it's something that, you know, is really interesting in how you even get it out of the tree to even make things along with the sweetness.
Well, Renee, so glad to be with you today and here on From the Woods Today, and so excited about our all maple episode. You know, this has been a long time coming. You're going to be hearing from a number of representatives of the Kentucky Maple Syrup Association, and we're going to be learning all about maple syrup production. We're going to learn about what it's like to be a producer. We're going to learn about some programming that we've been doing in maple syrup here over the last year or so. We're also going to learn about the state fair. You know, there's a maple opportunity. You can submit maple syrup samples to the state fair and try to get you a blue ribbon if you want it. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then we're going to try to wrap it all up with a huge promotion for the 2024 Kentucky Maple Days. They're coming up on February 3rd and 17th, and we've got producers across Kentucky that are getting ready. They're probably out there tapping trees and collecting sap right now as we speak. So we'll be promoting those as well. But we're going to have a number of folks joining us, and I'm just glad to have today with you and to celebrate maple. I will tell you, folks, if you have questions for our presenters and you're on Zoom with us, you can use the chat function and we can interact with you that way. If you are on YouTube, hit us up via email at forestry.extension@uky.edu, and we'll be able to respond that way. But Renee, glad to be with you today.
Yes, same here. You know, it is definitely cold outside, but we are definitely interested in how you do all of this maple syrup stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. And Billy, do you want all the presenters to turn on their cameras or just one?
Well, yeah, we can all say hi real quick if we can get our presenters to say hi real quick.
All right.
Excellent. Coming. Yeah. All right. What a great looking crew. Appreciate you all being with us. You're going to be hearing from each of these folks today. And again, these are representatives of the Kentucky Maple Syrup Association. And I just want to thank you all publicly for all the work that you all have done for maple production here in Kentucky and trying to help producers and leading to this big Maple Day that we got coming up. So big thanks to each of you all. Really do appreciate you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Right. So we're going to be hearing from each of these, but we're going to start with Mr. Jeff Webb. Jeff's one of the officers of the Kentucky Maple Syrup Association. And Jeff, we thought it might be interesting for folks to kind of learn how, we get syrup out of these maple trees. You know, it certainly doesn't pour out as syrup, does it?
No, it doesn't. A little bit of work to it, but it's a fun project, fun hobby.
Oh, well, good. Well, Jeff, we asked you if you
ready to roll.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about maple syrup production. So Jeff's put together a presentation to kind of walk us through maple syrup production as he's getting that ready. Again, if you all have questions for us, you can hit us up via the chat in Zoom or on YouTube at forestry.extension@uky.edu. So we're ready, Jeff, if you are.
Okay, here we go. How do you get from a tree right here into boiling operation to putting it into jars or putting it in some type of container? That's where we're at. What is maple syrup? Maple syrup is pure maple sap at about 2% sugar content with enough water taken out of it to get down to about a 67% sugar concentration. And it takes about 44 gallons of sap to make a gallon of syrup, which is a lot of boiling. But there are standards for syrup, and USDA has one to be between 66 and 68.9% sugar content in maple syrup. So that's pretty easy. Well, what do you need to make it? First of all, you need some trees. You need some maple trees. And in Kentucky, we've got several species of the genus Acer, common name maple. We have sugar maples right here, and a red maple, and a box elder, a silver maple, black maple, and I believe we've got a striped maple too. But if you look, majority of the maple trees in Kentucky are either going to be red maple or sugar maple. As you get down into the box elder, which by the way is in the Acer family, and it is legal to put that into maple syrup, still call it maple syrup, even though it's not called maple, it's a box elder, but it is good for maple syrup. Silver maple, you're getting down into the sparse area of trees, and as you go to black maple and the striped maple, they're pretty sparse. Sugar maples, pretty much all over Kentucky. Red maples is eastern Kentucky. There's a whole lot of red maples in the eastern part of Kentucky. Sugar maples, the bluegrass region, I think, is mostly sugar maples. But anyway, here we go. So how do you identify a maple tree? If you're not sure, go to a website, go get you a good book. But quickly, the leaves of the sugar maple, if you look at the Canadian flag, it's got a picture of the sugar maple right on their flag. And the red maple, and I'll show you some pictures here. This here is a sugar maple. As you can see, that's very much like the Canadian flag. Red maple is very similar to sugar maple. This is red, but it's got sharper lobes in it, and the edges are serrated. And of course, in the fall, it's more of a reddish color, and the twigs and everything are red. One other identification is if you look at the maple trees, you'll have branches that are opposing, and also the leaflets are going to be opposing each other. They're right across from each other. Here's a picture of a box elder. It's got a lot of side branches. That's typical of a box elder. Box elder leaves are look just like a poison ivy plant. When I was a kid, we used to call them poison ivy trees. But anyway, once you've got maple trees identified, you need to get, and I can't see my screen here. You need to tap the trees when the sap is flowing. Sap flows up and down the trees in cold weather when nights are below freezing and days are above freezing. You're not going to tap in the middle of summertime or in the fall or in the late spring, early spring. But when the nights are 25, 30 degrees and got 40 to 45 degree days with a lot of good sunshine, that's an ideal time. In Kentucky, mid-January is about the start of maple season, and it'll end towards the end of February, early March, when it starts getting too warm and the trees start budding out. When your trees start budding out, the syrup is going to taste a little bit buddy, have a buddy or a sharp taste to it that's not so good. So you need to get sap from the tree. So how do you do this? Well, you drill a hole in the tree, and you drill a hole based on a thing called a spout or a spile that you tap into the tree, and drill your hole about 1.75 inches deep with a diameter of the bit that matches your spout size, and tap the spout in with moderate force, not too hard or you want to split the wood. Common hole sizes are 5/16, which is what these spouts look like. They're polycarbonate or just plastic spouts. The other spouts are these. It's made for buckets, and that's typically of 7/16. Here's a stainless steel spout down here, and you can see I've got some bags in the trees connected to spouts, and down here I've got tubing connected to a tree where I go from tree to tree with tubing and collect all my sap at one place. So you need methods to collect sap. I started off using 2-liter pop bottles. You can use buckets, bags, whatever. One thing to keep in mind, sap is slightly acidic, so the containers need to be food safe and non-reactive. Don't use old galvanized buckets. Some of them they're lined with lead or have lead in them to make them. Don't use old drywall buckets. You don't know what's been in those things. You don't know what the buckets are made of. Food safe plastic buckets are easy enough to purchase. Don't let your sap get too warm. Treat sap like milk. It'll spoil if you leave it too long in too warm of a temperature. Sap can be off color some, but it should be clear. If it's real milky, just dump it. Get rid of it if you've waited too long. Temperatures above 50 are iffy. Boil it down as quick as possible. If you can boil it, if you can't boil it, keep it close to freezing as possible. Spoilage is a time temperature function. So you got to have some kind of container to boil the sap. Use a pan with good surface area that is food safe and non-reactive. Stainless is best. Avoid aluminum. If you're a maple syrup producer selling it, you can't use aluminum pans. You might get a metal taste out of it too. Keep in mind that you're boiling this stuff, and it's a hot liquid. Don't get, put your pans on a stable surface. You don't want to be scalding yourself or any bystanders around. How do you tell when you've got maple syrup? There's about three methods that I know of. There may be more, I don't know. The temperature method is probably the easiest, but probably least accurate. But you boil until the syrup is 7.5 degrees above the boiling point of water. Keeping in mind that the boiling point of water is not the same at 1,000-foot elevation as it is at sea level. And you may need to even adjust a little for barometric pressure of the day. I'm 950-foot elevation, so my water boils about 211 degrees, so I need a 218.5 degree temperature. Another method is refractometer. Refractometer uses the bending, the refraction of light going through the syrup between two pieces of glass, and it puts a line on a scale that you can read out the sugar content, which is called bricks. These can be a little tricky to use and to learn to use, and they cost $35 or so. There's some automatic ones, but they get up in the $100 or more cost. Density method is with a hydrometer. If you've ever seen people make beer, wine, they use hydrometers too. It's basically a glass tube weighted on the bottom that you put in the syrup, and it sinks to a certain position, and when syrup is right, it hits the line on the hydrometer that tells you you've got syrup. And basically, here's a candy thermometer and a refractometer that I use, which is different than the automatic ones. Filtration and bottling. When you make syrup, you're going to get particulates that precipitate out. You can filter this if you wish, or bottle it and let it settle over time. Buy filters. If you're going to filter, buy filters from a syrup dealer, syrup supply house. Coffee filters, cheesecloth, paper towels, etc. don't work very well. I've tried them. If you do filter it, then you need to reheat it between 180 and 200 degrees before bottling to kill out any mold spores. And when you bottle this stuff, what's the shelf life of it? Well, not much will grow inside the sugar content of maple syrup. There's some mold spores and stuff that will. That's about it. If you bottle it in glass properly and not expose it to atmosphere, it can last years. I read somewhere on the internet somebody had a bottle in her pantry for 50 years, pulled it out, and it was still good. Maybe, I don't know. If in plastic bottles, about 2 years, you start getting color changes and a little bit of flavor change in it. And I've read somewhere that if you bottle it in, if there's some kind of tin containers you put it in, that you need to use it within a year. If you open it, if opened and kept refrigerated, it'll typically stay 6 months or so, of course, if you don't use it all. And that's about it. All I've got for you all. Best of luck. Hope you can make some of this delectable elixir we call maple syrup. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kaylin.
Okay, can you all hear me and see my screen?
We can.
Perfect. All right, so my name's Kaylin Colston. This is my husband, Kevin. We are new maple producers in Western Kentucky. This is only our 3rd year basically making maple syrup. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our Kentucky Maple School this past year in November of 2023. The Kentucky Maple Syrup Association kind of reestablished this past year. I'll let John talk to you a little bit more about that. But we did go ahead and plan, with the help of our awesome UK friends, another maple school. And this was the first Kentucky Maple School that we've had in person since I think 2019. So that was a big deal. It was virtual during COVID. So it was really great to get everyone together. We were new to the Kentucky Maple Syrup Association. This was our first time ever participating in a maple school in person. So that was great for us, and we got to be part of the planning of it. So that was really exciting. But in November, on the first Saturday in November, is traditionally when the Kentucky Maple School is held. And this is a great place for producers that are brand new. We had folks that had never tapped a tree before. They did it their first time that weekend in November, all the way up to experienced producers that had been making maple syrup for years. So it was a great place to bring everyone together to enable lots of good learning and polishing your skills for making maple syrup. I kind of have our agenda here, what our different speakers talked about. We had Nate Bissell from Bissell Maple Farm in Ohio. He was our keynote speaker, and he came and spoke about what it was like going from a hobby. His family had done, his dad had kind of set up, and then he talked about going really commercial in his area and moving into the bourbon aged maple syrup. So that was really neat to hear about. He talked about the highs and the lows of that. There were definitely highs and there were definitely lows. And we greatly appreciate him sharing that with us and being really open about that. And then we had Dr. Mike Recklin from Future Generations University. He actually came up the night before and did a tapping demonstration out in the woods at the Berea College Forestry Outreach Center. That was awesome. We got to see quite a few folks that had never tapped a tree before, that have never made maple syrup, and they were there to learn, and they had that opportunity. They learned how to identify maple trees out in the woods, and then they had the chance to tap them. And even our more experienced producers got to use one of these precision tappers. If you see up here in the top left corner, that's a precision tapper. That's a tool that can make sure that you create a nice round tap hole and have the best production possible, especially if you're on a vacuum system. So some of the more experienced producers got to use one of those as well, and that was neat. There were quite a few of us that wanted one afterwards. And then we had Ben and Emma McKinney that were here in the center. They came and talked about value-added products. So one of their big sellers is maple cotton candy. They made candy-coated nuts for us. In this picture, that's what they're doing. They did maple candied nuts. That was delicious. They also made maple French toast. That was awesome that we all got to sample and try. That was kind of our mid-afternoon snack after lunch, pick me up before we went home. We also had Brandon Daniels. He's over here at the top right. He spoke on tubing systems and reverse osmosis machines. Jeff helped speak on that as well. That is Jeff's reverse osmosis setup right here. And so Brandon was explaining the difference in that. Brandon is also a CDL distributor. So he took pre-orders, and a lot of us maple producers were able to pick up our orders and save on shipping there at the Maple School. So that was an awesome opportunity for us. That saved us a bunch of money being able to pick it up in person since we were already there. And then also over here is Jimmy Brochtrup from Smoky Lake Maple Products. That's who we have our evaporator and our new finishing pan through. And so he came and spoke on finishing syrup, on testing density and filtering the syrup to make sure you have a nice clear syrup for your consumers. All of these speakers were fantastic. It was a day chock full of information. We learned a bunch of new stuff. We had a great lunch together and the opportunity to just sit down, get to know one another, get to know each other's operations, find people that have a like operation. You know, our operation is very different from Seth's operation. And Kevin and Seth will talk to you about that, I'm sure. But learning what's right for you and picking up tidbits of information that can work at your setup rather than what works for someone else. So, and here there's a recording of the Kentucky Maple School from 2023. We recorded that and it's now available here on the UK website. If you just type into Google maple syrup UKY, it will pop right up and you can go to the Maple School tab and see the recording from the Maple School. It's like 4 hours and 15 minutes. It's every session that that was presented is on there. So it totaled to about 4 hours of pure learning content. And then of course, you know, we had visiting time in between as well. So that was a great day. We really enjoyed it. It was awesome to be part of putting that together and being able to contribute. Hey, we're new producers. This is what we need to know. And we've already kind of identified some new sessions that maybe would be beneficial to see during next year's Maple School as well. So it was a great time. It'll be the same weekend, the first weekend in November again this year, and we're really excited. We don't have a location or anything like that yet, but the board members will get together for the Kentucky Maple Syrup Association and kind of set and help plan all that as well again. So, did I miss anything, you all?
I think that's good on that.
Okay. I'll let Kevin talk to you. He's going to give his perspective as a new maple producer and kind of how we got started.
Well, first off, how we got started, Kaylin went to a conference for her work, and one of the speakers was Seth, and he was talking about maple syrup in Kentucky. So she came home talking to me about that, and it perked up our interest. So I got her a starter kit for Christmas that year. Came with, I think, 30 or 35 taps. And then we played around with that. And then
On buckets.
yeah, on buckets. And then I think we had maybe 25 gallons of sap. We boiled all that down and it made 1 pint and 1 quart of syrup. So the following February when we went to Seth? Yeah, we went and visited Seth there at Southdown Farms. And I got to see his setup and his operation, which is very, very cool in the mountains. And if you ever get a chance to go visit Seth, I would highly, highly suggest it. It is great. And the information that we got from him, we brought it back here to Western Kentucky and implied that with some of our own that we have learned. And we kind of modified some things. But going from mountains to a very, very flat land is totally different. It's a different beast. The bottom left, we have all of our lines ran to a manifold connected to a pump and a battery powered pump. That is how we get the vacuum for our tubes that we have on our trees. Because going from tubes to buckets is very different. And we like tubes a whole lot better than having to go out to each tree and gather buckets. Whenever you use vacuum, you want to have a good suction on it, and it helps to draw all the sap towards one collection point, which we have right here in this middle picture. We use 55-gallon drums. We have plastic barrel liners on the inside to keep everything sanitary and clean. And then that cuts down on a lot of washing barrels too. So it's kind of a win-win for both of us. We also have it set up with solar panels. I used to go out before work every day, swap batteries, and then come home again and swap batteries again. So this cuts out a lot of labor for me in general, and I get to sleep in a little bit before work. The batteries will usually last, still kind of playing around with it because it's new. Right now we're going on about 2.5 to 3 days tops. And it's just a 100-watt solar panel that we got from Harbor Freight. Something else that's new that we have, Kayla mentioned it earlier, is a RO, or reverse osmosis. And all it does is you run the sap through that through different filters, which there's a picture in my next slide. It separates the water and the sap, and it cuts down on boiling time, and it concentrates the sap a whole lot more. This picture here on the right, you see we have our drop lines that connect to our tubing, and that tubing runs all through the woods to our pump. I think the most taps that we have on one line is close to 10. We try not to put more than 7 to 10 on one line, because if you do that, that'll overload the line and it will cause the vacuum to go down. We went from using 5/16 to using 3/16 size tubing this year. We found out that the 3/16 for us works better with the vacuum, and it helps to create more vacuum, which also helps create more sap.
That's a controversial in the maple world too. A lot of people say on flat land you have to use 5/16, but we've done both, and we can definitely testify that the 3/16 moves the sap a lot better.
This is what works for us.
We've had lots of trial and error, lots of error.
So we have run into a lot of challenges, especially being brand new and on the opposite end of the state than mountains. So it's, like I said, it's its own beast. First off, you have the weather. Right now we're in a pretty hard freeze. This is going on, I think, day 3 of a freeze, and hopefully by the end of the week everything will thaw out and we'll be able to collect some more sap. Something else that causes us a lot of trouble is squirrels. Like I said earlier, we were thinking about going from 5/16 to 3/16 tubing, and we went out to check tubing one day, and all of our tubes was eat up by squirrels. They bite holes in it, they tear everything up, they want to get to the sweet sap that's inside it. So that kind of helped and made our minds up to go ahead and swap to 3/16. Something else is sanitation. Being in the West, we have a lot of warm weather, and mold grows really easy here. With the pumps, we get to keep the vacuum on the tubes, and that will help to keep the mold down. It seems like whenever we had buckets, the tubes was just filling up with mold really, really fast because nothing was moving up and down the tubes to keep it cleaned out and all that. Another challenge is how to pay for all this stuff. Luckily, we found some grants through our local USDA and
Kentucky State University.
Yeah, Kentucky State University. Through them, we was able to get our evaporator, tubing, taps, a lot of good equipment and material to get us started on it. Something else that's we had to find out the hard way was what works for us. I'm sure Seth will probably talk about it, but he is on natural vacuum. His tubes run up and down the mountain, so whenever the sap flows through his tubes, it creates its own vacuum naturally and does not have to use a pump like us. I was in the woods whenever we first put the tubes up. I was on the phone almost every night with a guy from West Virginia till after 10 o'clock trying to figure out vacuum and hooking the tubes up to the pump and getting everything working. And that's a fun deal to mess with.
Mentors have been instrumental in helping us, and we have a ton that have reached out and really helped us along the way.
So something else, she's mentioned mentors and stuff. If you notice this bottom right picture, phone a friend. I mean, everybody will help out in any way they can. We've talked to Seth a whole lot. We've talked to a friend in West Virginia, other people. But Facebook has helped us a whole lot. There's several pages on Facebook. You get to ask questions, like you're polling the audience pretty much, and they'll give you feedback on that.
That can be a rabbit hole too. You still have to make the best decision for your operation, but
So some of the comments you just want to take with a grain of salt and just move on. But on the flip side of that, what you get out of all this trouble is the syrup. It will be some of the best tasting stuff you've ever ate. And
we experimented that first year, with the 25 gallons of sap, because we didn't know if it would taste good here. We didn't know of anyone this far west making maple syrup. There's a gentleman about an hour and 15 minutes east from us that does successfully. But we wanted to experiment here and see if like the actual trees we have here were gonna make good tasting syrup, and sure enough, they do.
Our kids like to help out a whole lot.
Mhm.
So we get to spend time with family. As you can see in the top right picture, they're helping stack wood. And that they love to go check sap. They love to help split wood. And they just like to be out there with us, and they love to learn. That's another reward of it is you get to spend time with your family.
Mhm.
It also produces a good revenue for us in the wintertime. Being on a working farm, we have hay and beef cattle spring, summer, and fall. And that takes up the majority of our, 3/4 of our year. And then in the wintertime, we really don't have nothing to do. And then this is a good source of another type of income for us. We like to share how we do stuff with people. We have an open house. We talk about it with our friends and family, and just everybody in our community has asked questions about it, and we love to teach people. We don't want to be people that just kind of tries to hold information to
Keep the
ourselves.
secret,
Yeah, and we don't want to steer people wrong on stuff. Being in the maple world, I'll say, you get to meet a whole lot of people. It's become our maple family pretty
Mhm.
much. We have people all across the state of Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio. There's even a farm in Tennessee that we keep in I'm sorry.
Contact.
Yeah,
with.
contact with.
And the McKinneys in Maine.
Mhm.
So we have a lot
There's-
of folks that have helped us.
There's many people that you get to meet and begin a good relationship with, and it's fun. I think it's an addiction for us. I know we stress out about it a lot before we get started and everything, but in the end, it's a very, very good end result with everything that we do, we know, and with everybody we meet.
If you don't mind the cold and a little bit of extra exercise, then it's maybe a hobby for you.
Yeah.
All right, we'll pass it along to Seth.
Hello, how awesome is this? From the woods in 2024 and a whole program doing maple syrup. It's one of the things that love to talk about. It was exciting to see the Colstons and what they're doing out there. It definitely got bit by the bug. And now they're in over their heads in maple syrup, and that's a good place to be. What I thought I would do is just talk a little bit about the perspective of why consider making maple syrup in Kentucky as a commercial venture, as an ag business. Some people might say, that's kind of crazy, isn't it? Because don't they make maple syrup in the Northeast? And who makes it in Kentucky? And these are some of the things I'd like to talk about today. And where I start answering that question is helping people to realize that Kentucky actually has a very long history of making maple sugar. In fact, the Native Americans made it before we ever got here. They didn't make maple syrup for their pancakes and waffles, but they did take maple sap and convert it into sugar because that was one of the few forms of sugar that they would have. They taught the settlers how to do that. And all the way up to today, 2024, it's a real possibility as a commercial venture in Kentucky. I'm convinced of this wholeheartedly, or I wouldn't be doing it. I can remember the first time I sold maple syrup. We made it for years for ourselves as a hobby, but then we invested some dollars and started making it commercially. And when we did, there was this old man that came up to me. He was well over 85, and he said, "Did you make this here in Letcher County?" I said, yes, sir, we did. He said, "Right here?" I said, "Yeah, we made it on Crest Colony." And right in front of me, this guy went back to his childhood and told me memories that he had of everyone up and down the creek and all over the place making maple sugar. And they made maple sugar because sugar was rationed in the 40s during the war. It was hard to get, it was expensive. So everybody just made their own. So as I began to think about that, it's a really cool connection to tap into history, to something that has been here in Kentucky, that was a big part of our culture, but is now nearly lost. And I think one of the things that I'm very interested in is reviving that memory and making this a real possibility in the mountains. The other thing to consider about why to make maple syrup in Kentucky as a commercial venture is we've got a whole lot of maple trees. I had no idea. 15 years ago, I had a hard time knowing what a maple tree looked like in the woods. But I discovered that my hillsides were full of sugar maples and red maples. And I knew somehow or another maple syrup could be gotten from them. So that started our quest and pursuit in figuring out how to do this. Often on my tours, when I give a tour on our farm, I ask people, how many maple trees are there in Letcher County alone? And usually people have no clue. The guesses go all over the place, but according to UK Timber Survey, we have 6.9 million maple trees 8 inches in diameter or larger that are ready to tap today. What that means is you don't have to plant it, you don't have to grow it. You could go out and literally collect sap and by the end of the day, turn it into a cash sale. So we have an asset that goes on underutilized across the state that could be turned into a cash crop. I think that's a really important thing to think about. However, in making maple syrup, there are a lot of challenges that come along with making maple syrup, like there are with any other venture. There's a steep learning curve. You heard the Colstons talk about all the things that there are to figure out. Every year, we don't have this, we don't have everything down yet. We learn every year of how to do better, how to produce a quality product. It's one of those activities that you never stop learning about. And that's one of the things that makes it fun for us. Another challenge is just the investment of it. There's an equipment investment that needs to be made. You have things like evaporators, reverse osmosis, filtering is a real challenge, but there's some pretty helpful equipment that you can invest in to help with that. A place to do the processing, to boil down your sap, and in the form of a sugar shack. Also, if you're wanting to sell your maple syrup in a store or online, you're going to have a licensed commercial kitchen where you can process the sap in order to be legal. We have found, like Kevin stated, there are some great resources in Kentucky in the forms of low interest loans for farmers or grants that can help meet this investment. And the other thing we've found in doing this is the return on the investment is really good. Even though we're borrowing money or investing grant dollars, we can get a return on that investment pretty quickly, because it's one of the agricultural things that we've done that we've actually made money on. I've lost plenty of money doing other things, but this is a money-making activity. Another challenge is squirrels. Death to all squirrels. They do chew the tubing, and that's a challenge, but it's one we can live with. There's risk involved with the venture. Like any other agricultural activity, there can be good years and there can be bad years. Last year was not such a great year. It got too warm too quick. And when it gets above 50 degrees, the sap will spoil. Our yields were down on our farm by 57% last year. Extreme weather can be a risk too. You have tornadoes, you can have fires in the woods, you can have floods, you can have ice storms. I have a good friend at Maple D in Johnson County, Don Derby, and they had a huge ice storm. And we went up, and his sugar bush was devastated by the ice that happened that year, and it knocked him out of production. There's challenges, there's risks, but there's also rewards. I think one of the rewards for me is maple syrup production is just a very cool way to tap into history. I think one of the rewards is all the technology that can be involved, the science involved, working on reverse osmosis and figuring out how to do things more efficiently, the tubing, the natural vacuum, or creating mechanical vacuum. These things are all rewarding to somebody who likes to work with their hands and figure things out. It's a good way to supplement your income. And it's a good way to promote your farm because the industry is kind of novel. A lot of people take interest when they hear that you're doing it. At the last Kentucky Maple Syrup Day, we had over 350 visitors on our farm in one day coming out to learn about maple syrup, but also to buy product. So it's a good way to do agritourism. So there's financial rewards as well. I am of the opinion that the rewards outweigh the risk, and there are great connections to be made within UK extension. Billy and his team has been a huge help for all the producers in the state, but also the Kentucky Maple Syrup Association and the network of producers. It's a good way to form friendships, to learn from one another, and to cheer each other on when there are successes. So it's a good community to be a part of. And I will turn it over to whoever is next.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Duvall, current president of the Kentucky Maple Syrup Association. The KMSA got started a few years back by a couple producers in Eastern Kentucky, and it has grown just in this past year. Over the summer, we kind of reestablished the KMSA after some of our producers kind of were hit by ice storms and flooding. So we, as a committee, kind of worked together to rebuild the Kentucky Maple Syrup Association. And, you know, it started with just a few members, and we're over 40 members now. And there's still more people out there that are producing maple syrup that we'd like to join us. Our membership is only $25. And I'm going to bring up our website here if I can. All right. So here's our website. It's still a work in progress. But you can see here the Kentucky Maple Syrup Association. If you want to find it, it's just kymaplesyrup.com. And down at the bottom is an important thing is you could join us today right here. You can click on join today and it'll take you to our application. It's just a Google form and it'll submit right to us. And then you can mail a check to us. There should be an address on the application of where you can send the $25. And you can see this map, but it's all over the state where people are making maple syrup. And we actually need to add more counties to this since we posted this, because like I said, we have gained a lot of new members since our last maple school. all our members here that have been presenting so far kind of said a lot of things that I was going to say. Our association is just a fellowship of people with who want to spread the word in maple syrup in Kentucky. You know, just a few years ago, I didn't know myself that it was a possibility until again I met Seth and others that do it, and it's really grown in the state, and we really want to help um, push the knowledge of maple syrup in Kentucky. Um, One thing about this industry is we don't care to share information. You know, you get into other ventures, people may want to keep a secret of how they do their operation. But with maple syrup, everybody is very open to sharing how things are done, and just have a good conversation about it. It's always a real hot topic when I talk about maple syrup. Everybody asks all kinds of questions and not afraid to tell them about how it is done here in Kentucky. The other thing I wanted to show you is we have a Facebook page, so definitely get in here and follow us on Facebook. It's the Kentucky Maple Syrup Association. Here it is. Make sure you get in here and like and follow us, and we like to post everything that we're doing about our Kentucky Maple Days that are getting ready to come up in February. The board decided to make it more than just one day, because with maple syrup in Kentucky, you never know how the weather is going to cooperate. And so if you just shoot for one particular Saturday, you could get an ice storm. That's happened to us in the past. So we've decided to have 2 days for to have Maple Days in Kentucky, to have producers open up their farms to be able to see how it is done. So with that little adventure, I believe Billy has some information about Maple Days. I know we're getting short on time, so if we want to segue into the Kentucky Maple Days and what he has to post.
All right. Thank you, John and Jeff and Kaylin and Kevin and Seth. It was great. I'm hearing from each of you. I really do appreciate it. You know, as they've been talking, we have been building up to the 2024 Kentucky Maple Days, and I wanted to show you all where you can do that. But first, I'm going to put a little link in the chat for us, and this will get you to a place where you can find all of the current producers that we have. And I'll go ahead and share that with our team here, with everybody. So this is our maple syrup webpage. And, you know, real quick, I would like to acknowledge the USDA Agricultural Marketing Services. They funded this work through a grant several years ago. So big thanks to them helping us to be engaged and involved with this. So I just wanted to acknowledge them real quick. What I would say is when you get on here, you'll see we have a number of tabs, and we'll get you to the Maple Day here. And as you scroll down, you'll be able to see the map we currently have. We currently have about 15 or so producers that have signed up to participate, and we are still accepting more producers. I will tell you, if you scroll up here, we do have a little link. If you are a producer and would like to participate in either of the February 3rd or February 17th day, just complete that form and we'll try to get your information posted as well on this map. But I just wanted to point out, you know, the spread of these producers. And some of these producers are offering tours. Some of them are giving demonstrations. And we also have a couple of our county extension offices that have been engaged in maple syrup production, doing some work as well. So we have the Boone County Cooperative Extension offices doing some demonstrations, educational programs for that, as well as the Hardin County Extension office. And I'll share their flyer in a second. But what I wanted to point out, when you get to the map here and you're starting to plan your days on February 3rd and February 17th, please make note that producers have different schedules. Some are opening earlier, some are open both days, some are open later, some are offering, you know, certain products and some are not. So you want to kind of know what you're getting into. So you can click on any of your locations and you can start pulling up some of these locations if you like. You can also just get on here and see all the list of participants. If you know the name of the one you're looking for, you can quickly get to that. So we jump over to Seth's place there, and you can see that Seth and his family are going to be operating on February 3rd and 17th, basically all days on those. So you can get some more information about that. So what I would encourage you is, as you're planning your trips on February 3rd and 17th, make sure you use this as a resource to know where you're going, what time the operations are open, and what you can expect once you get there. And I will tell you, folks, this is such a unique opportunity to get your hands on maple syrup, Kentucky maple syrup. we produce not enough for the demand that's out there. So these producers will quickly sell out of their product. So if you are interested in getting your hands on some Kentucky maple syrup, I strongly encourage you to make plans now to visit on February 3rd and February 17th. Go to some on the 3rd, then go to some more on the 17th, and you will really appreciate the amount of work and effort that these producers put into it. But most importantly, you'll greatly enjoy that sweet, sweet maple syrup that comes from these farms. So I would like to really thank all of our producers that are participating in 2024 Kentucky Maple Days. And a big thanks to the Kentucky Maple Syrup Association for their leadership on this. And I'm so excited that we have 2 days now. So we're trying to promote it. So if you know of other producers or potential producers that might be interested, please let them know about this opportunity and get ready with your family to go visit as many producers as possible during the 2024 Kentucky Maple Days. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop that share for now. And Renee, wow, we did a lot of maple syrup today. We really did. So a big thanks again to all of our folks. We do have probably a few little questions or whatever in the chat pod. And, you know, if our fellow presenters want to pop their camera back up, they're welcome to do so.
Let's see, I'm trying to go through, and some people have answered some, but
Okay.
let's just maybe answer, since we have a little bit of time, let's answer some questions on the air too. How many gallons can one maple tree produce?
Oh, sap or syrup, I guess both, right? Yeah. So,
It says gallons, yeah, so, yeah. So I'm assuming sap. Maybe can you, somebody talk
you want to
about,
take that one?
Matt, you want to take that one?
Sure. So we're happy to see 15 gallons of sap from a maple tree. We're tickled with that. But what makes a big difference is how sweet that sap is. And that changes from each year. If the sap is at 2% sugar, you can expect to get 42 gallons of maple syrup from, or a gallon of maple syrup from 42 gallons of sap. Ours is usually running around 1.6, and that means we need about 69 gallons of sap to make a gallon of maple syrup. Sugar content makes a big deal.
Certainly.
And does it depend on what side of the state you live on to how much syrup or sap you're going to get out of the trees?
I think it depends a lot on the weather, the environment that the tree is in, the health of the tree. And probably the biggest connection though is the weather, and it can be the crown of the tree. There's a lot of things that can be done to do timber stand improvements in your sugar bush to try to get more sap. And yes.
Yeah. And I think the growing season and, you know, before the tapping has a big part of it too. You know, if we have a really good productive growing season, that gives a lot more reserves for the tree to kind of draw upon.
All right. So where's the best place to anyone can chime in. It doesn't matter who it is.
Go ahead, Renee. Go ahead, Renee.
I said, someone asked, where's the best place to tap a tree?
Is that like the north side or south side, or does it matter the orientation, right? I think that's
Above a limb, below a limb, what's the best place?
It doesn't matter, but you don't want to tap within 12 inches. I think Seth answered that, but within 12 inches up or down of an old hole, or within 3 inches from the side of an old hole. You create dead wood for the next year and for a long time. So you just want to avoid doing that. It doesn't matter north side, south side. You might get a little bit sap later on the north side than you will on the south side, but overall, I think it'll average out pretty good.
You know, one thing I really appreciated you all sharing today, and what I have kind of experienced and learned over the last few years working with producers, is just the variety of approaches, right? The different equipment, the different setups, and how they can be so uniquely tailored to each situation. And it really makes me so excited about the ingenuity that these producers come up with. And so I would encourage you all, if you are potential producers or you're just getting started, become a member of the Kentucky Maple Syrup Association. It's a great way to get connected and to learn, right? Learn from these folks that have been doing it. We may not have all the answers, but as a collective, we've got a lot of the answers, and we can work together and support one another. And, you know, as Kaylin and Kevin were saying, we see it all the time. It is a maple family, and we're all trying to be supportive of one another. So yeah, get engaged, get involved if this is something you want to do for sure.
Definitely.
One place this all comes together is at the Kentucky State Fair. Any producer from any type of production can come and enter your maple syrup at the Kentucky State Fair and win ribbons and premiums for that. So we did that for the first time this year. We were really pleased with that. And we're even talking about the Kentucky Maple Syrup Association maybe having a presence at the state fair this year, possibly selling some sweet goodies. So definitely make sure you stop by the field seed and grain section at the Kentucky State Fair and view all the maple syrup entries.
Thank you.
Hey
Eric?
guys, yeah. So I guess I had a question for you guys because it sounds like squirrels are an issue, and I have a little bit of connection with maple syrup production. So are you guys cleaning your lines with bleach? Nope. Okay. All right. 10-4. Yeah. My father-in-law has a lot of trouble with porcupines and bleach. Yeah.
I
So
clean my
anyhow,
lines with, I clean my lines with the pool shock, which is a calcium hypochloride or chloride,
Oh.
whatever it is, instead of sodium.
okay, 10-4. I figured you guys knew that information, but I was gonna pass it on. So anyhow.
Hey, again, we're just trying to help each other. I love
Right,
it.
exactly.
It's in the spirit of doing better because, again, there's just so many. You would think it's simple, right? You got a tree, it's got sap in it, need to get it out, get rid of the water, you got syrup. But there's so many different things that can go into it. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, well, folks, we're about out of time. Is there any kind of last second things anybody wants to say or they didn't get in before we wrap up the show?
Anything else in the questions? So in the chat pod, but Seth and Jeff, Kevin, Caitlin, John, we appreciate you being on so much to talk about maple syrup. I am sure that this is not the last time we will have you on. So we greatly appreciate you joining us today and talking about everything with maple syrup. And, anytime we can, help to try to get the word out about anything going on maple syrup wise, you've got our contact information. So please keep us informed about all of that kind of thing. So,
all right.
Really,
Well, again, thank you all so much. Again, if you're going to go visit some of these places, please make sure you visit the site so you kind of know in advance. And again, we've got a few of our extension offices, including the Hardin County Extension Office, Boone County Extension Office. I think Letcher County is going to try to do something as well. So there's some good kind of educational programs set up there as well. But go see as many producers as you can and get your hands on some of that sweet Kentucky maple syrup.
definitely. Until then, we'll talk to you next week. Take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
From the woods today.